But anyway, back to this common thread and this commonality, what we're seeing with people that have diagnosed issues with depression or low mood, and then probably maybe 30%, 25, 30% of the population could be suffering from this right now, is three things. We see low vitamin D, high HbA1c, and high CRP. I'll break these down. So everyone knows what vitamin D is.
Anyone in the northern hemisphere is deficient in vitamin D.
And you're looking at like insufficiency and deficiency, right? So that one most people know. Then you've got CRP, Charlie Romeo Papa, C-reactive protein, which is a biomarker that shows you how systemically inflamed your body is, a lot or a little. And systemic inflammation is correlated with all-cause mortality, with the exception of accidental death. And then you have HbA1c, hemoglobin A1c, essentially how sweet is your blood? Is it very sweet or is it in a more balanced state?
Sweet is in the glucose level?
Yeah. To give everyone an insight, every cell in the body has a cycle, a life cycle, meaning it becomes senescent and dies and another cell is reborn. So when it comes to red blood cells, this is a bit of the science, but if I draw your blood today and we isolate your red blood cell, we can tell how much sugar has glycated, i.e. stuck or bound to that red blood cell because it has a 3-month life cycle. And so you'll be able to determine how much sugar, how much glucose is stuck or bound or glycated to that red blood cell. And so HbA1c gives you an indication of how sweet your blood has been over a 3-month cycle. And there's optimal ranges. So again, low vitamin D, high HbA1c, high blood sugar, and high inflammatory markers. That's a common pattern we see in people that have low mood or depression. And these are three simple things that are very easy to fix. They're very hackable.
What would you do with sweetened blood? Is it a dietary fix? Is it supplementation?
It could be as simple as diet. The thing is, you always want to understand context. So I very much don't like...
Because then it would come back to how much glycogen they're actually burning. So if they have high activity... Yeah, I get it.
So for me,
one
probably
door opens
dietary, right?
Door.
I'll give you an insight, right? Genetically, a few years ago, I look like my father. I sound uncannily like him. Unfortunately, don't have much of a relationship with my dad, right? But when my father, this speaks to the value of a genetic test. So, and it's almost people talk about self-awareness. I'm big on self-awareness, but not just psychological self-awareness, biological self-awareness, both of your weaknesses and your strengths. So, again, I look like my father, I sound like my father. And when my father was 30, I was 8. And he fell into a diabetic coma and almost died. Now, I'm a slim guy. I'm 155, 56 pounds, 5'9" in a good day. My father's a bit taller than me, but he's built like Snoop Dogg anyway.
Right.
So when he lost half his body weight, you can imagine visually how scary that looked. It was so scary that my mum was crying and she did not like my father.
Was it diabetes that was causing
Type
this?
2 diabetes, not type 1.
Not type 1,
so
you need insulin.
Lifestyle related. Yeah. Anyway, so my father recovered. He required insulin. Anyway, I tell you that because later on in life, I was curious. I had a lot of health concerns. I had autoimmune issues, so on and so forth. So that encouraged me to get into exploring blood work analysis and such. Anyway, I performed a genetic test and I found out that I was at in terms of genetic variants, I have particular genes that put me in the top 1% of risk for type 2 diabetes because my father has those genes too. Now, we have imagine this fist here is your genes, my genes, right? So we have a set of genes, right? Every single one of us. And then we can either express those genes negatively based on how we choose to live our lives, the stress that we invite into our lives, we're pulling that trigger. Like my father was, because he had a real sweet tooth. He never exercised. He drank a lot. So he's expressing those negative genes. And
so people don't understand this. I mean, we're getting into the territory of epigenetics. So epigenetics is where there was a belief previously that your genetic code was written and that was it.
Yep.
You had
the mercy of your genes.
You had a genetic sort of sentence, if you like, and you couldn't adjust it. Epigenetics came to the fore to say that even though you have those genes in your body, it's how those genes are expressed by your actions, behaviours that will determine, or also your environment, which will determine that those genes can express differently. So
for me, the easiest way to explain epigenetics is here's your genes. You're not fixed. They're not. You're not governed by your genes. Epi means above. So you're literally able to hover above and manipulate your genes. Granted, some people are born with things that are unfixable, but there's a lot of things that lay dormant within us that if we live an unhealthy lifestyle, and some of us can get away with more things than others. You know, for example, maybe because of my genetic variability or my genetic variants, I can't eat as much fast-acting carbohydrates over a prolonged period of time as you could, you know, because maybe you don't have those gene variants, you know. So you ask the question, when you look at someone's biological fundamentals, you look at high blood sugar, what can we do to mitigate those issues? It's always dependent on the individual. You've got a lot of health influencers out there right now that go through an experience, and then because of that experience, it's been a positive experience, they say this thing worked for me, a diet or whatever, so therefore universally it should be applied to everything and everyone, meaning veganism worked for me or carnivore worked for me or whatever, so therefore everyone should be that thing. And that's not very enlightened. I've been pescatarian, fruitarian, carnivore, raw food. I've done all those diets, and I know this. There's a lot that can be argued with nutrition, but there's two indisputable facts. One, Western diet causes disease. Standard adult diet, you know, SAD diet, the four horsemen, if you will, diabetes, cancer, cardiovascular disease, and Alzheimer's. Western diet causes disease, and indisputable fact number two, any culture that's preserved its traditional nutritional approach is free from Western disease. So there's a lot that can be argued.
Western disease, such as the four that you've mentioned there.
Yeah. So Alzheimer's or type 3 diabetes, as that's now called, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and diabetes type 2.
That's pretty powerful.